Let's look at shade created in another way by overhangs. Let's go to Paris, and one of my favorite photos, I am shooting under an overhang, creating some shade on my subject where that light is coming in through one way, giving me some directional light and a very subtle highlight and shadow, creating the perfect lighting situation for this shot. And overhangs are great because it allows light in directionally. Let's go to the next photo where you can see this beautiful friend of mine wearing a green dress. She's in Newport Beach, California, under a pier. So if you ever get access to a pier and able to shoot underneath it, it can create some beautiful light. And in this situation, you've got two side lights. So the sun was very high at this point. I believe I was shooting roughly at around 2 p.m. in the summertime, high sun. And so that sun was creating catch lights on both sides of the pier coming in, giving some side lights. So it not only had light behind her, giving her some rim light around her hair, but also some side light. I'm gonna zoom in real close with her eye so you could see the catch lights. So as you can see light on both sides. So she is getting side light from both areas. And you can clearly see that she's looking into the bright sky and sand being lit by the sun. Here's another overhang at a very, very famous overpass in Paris. And they, shoot many movies here. And this was the perfect opportunity to shoot in any kind of weather, whether it's bright light or whether it's raining, you are covered, but it's also letting some beautiful light in on both sides. You can see the highlight and shadow on the columns, and that's a great tip-off of a location of where to shoot is when you see repetitive highlight and shadow. And you can tell that if I place the nose towards the highlight side, I'm gonna have her face lit up perfectly by that natural light coming in under the overpass. So really, in this situation, I could have her nose the way it's pointing, or I could turn her the opposite direction, and you can see that there's highlight and shadow on that side, and she could be lit up there too. So either way, I'm covered because I've got light coming in from both sides. And if you get some sort of bridge or pier or overhang like this, you can get two side lights, and it can open up a lot of creativity because you can have the nose pointing in either direction. Now, in this next situation, it's in Cuba, and we went to photograph these kids boxing, which was quite fun. But what was the setup? Their boxing ring was covered, right? And then the spectators would be on benches that were not covered. So there was bright light shining down on the sides where the boxing ring wasn't covered, and it was reflecting on the ground, and it was like a huge reflector and creating uplight right on them, creating beautiful portraits. You can see the catch lights in the eyes, and it's because of that reflected light where the sun is shining on the ground. I'm going to do another portrait. The next photo is a portrait of a person in the same location with the same lighting, and you're going to be able to see the catch lights in the eyes. So here's my young boxer here, and you can see some beautiful catch lights. You can see it by the long strips in the eyes. And I'm going to show the next slide, which is a close-up of his face, and you can see what created those catch lights. So you can see he's looking at people because there's a lot of us taking photos, right? And so you can see the people, but behind us, you can see the cement that's clearly lit up by the sun, creating a big, huge reflector, bringing that light right back at him. I made a diagram. I'm going to show you this next slide, which is a diagram that has actually happened. So the sun is very high at this point. It is mid-afternoon. It is probably 90 plus degrees. It's really hot. So that sun is beating down. It's hitting the cement and acting as a huge reflector back into the overhang, shining on my boxers in the boxing ring. And you can see how this is happening. This is the exact same situation in the next photo with this lady at the meat market. She's in an overhang. It is bright sun outside. It's hitting the cement and bouncing right back into her as a huge reflector, lighting her up and giving some beautiful light. This next slide, I'm going to show a close-up of her eyes so you can see the lit cement that's acting as a reflector, creating that catch light. Let's go back to Paris at this time. This is a photo that I took and it's one of my favorite photos. Here's a little bit of a tip when shooting in Paris at the Louvre. Go on a Tuesday because that's when it's closed and you're going to get the least amount of people. It was a bit overcast that day, but that shouldn't stop you from taking great photos. I'm using the overhang technique where I'm placing my subject on top of this little column here, and that light is coming in, lighting her up, right? And you can see how I posed her. I put the nose towards the light, and you can see a short side shadow on her face because that light is forced to be coming in directionally at her to create that shadow. That's one way. The overhang was another way that creates shade. Another way is through large openings or archways. And so here I'm in New York City. I'm at Central Park, and this is a very famous place to take pictures. They have these beautiful archways here, and it's a little bit protected by the sun, but it's letting in beautiful light. So what I'm going to use as my background, you can see on the left-hand side of this picture, there's these diamonds creating this nice little pattern, and there's a place for her to stand and sit. So I'm going to use that area and have that side light come in and taking pictures of her. So I'm going to show you these next set of pictures. I've got her against that pattern behind her, and I have her nose towards the light and her body away. Because she's wearing a light colored dress, I have to turn her body away from the light because I want to put shadow on it. And when I put shadow on it, it makes her dress darker, so her face will be the most brightest part of the image because the nose is pointed towards the light. And this is a full-length shot. And you can see the beautiful highlight and shadow on her arms and on her legs and on her face. And it creates great dimension because of the shadows that I've created and its side light coming in. This next one, I have her sitting down on that ledge that she was standing up. And now I'm going to take a waist up photo, but I do the same technique. I turn her body away from the light and her face towards the light, and I change the expression, and it looks like a completely different shot. I love the highlight and shadow on her body and on her face, giving it dimension. Now, just to show you that this light can create beautiful catch lights, I am going to take a close-up of her face. So I have her look straight at the camera, and you can see the beautiful catch light in her eyes, and that light source is coming from camera left right on her. You know that this is a beautiful light source because you can see the transition between the highlight on her cheek and on her nose and the shadow. And there's a smooth transition between highlight and shadow suggesting and meaning that there's a huge light source. Now, this next shot was taken at a restaurant bar in Hawaii where they just opened all their doors to let people in and also great light. So we went in there and you can see the catch lights in their eyes with this large opening. They're in the shade, but that light coming in creates some beautiful directional light. Another place to find shade is using a tunnel. I love using tunnels because it can let light in from both opening points. Now here, this photo was taken in Beijing, China, and they had this tunnel area and they had these huge doors and they opened them up and it created this red background, which was awesome. And so she was also wearing red, so I kind of like that red on red tone. So I had 2 side lights lighting her up. I had her move to one end of the tunnel so the light would be stronger. Okay, that was the main light on her face. And then the other tunnel was creating some light that would give some beautiful hair light, giving dimension to and texture to her hair. So I had 2 side lights coming in and I'm using a tunnel to create the light. This photo was taken at the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum. So it was an airport hangar where they put a lot of planes inside, and it was a huge door that you could slide open, giving some beautiful light. And this next photo shows the exact position where I had her and actually how big this sliding door was. Actually, it's only opened partially because they have to actually let airplanes come through this door, but they just opened it up a little bit for us, which was still like 20 feet. So you can see that beautiful diffused light coming into that door. And I just placed the subject right next to the door, and you can see some highlight and shadow on her face to give me some dimension.